Her name is Dr. Sherrie Campbell. So she's a licensed psychologist with over 2 decades of clinical training and expertise. She specializes in helping people cut ties from toxic relationships and family. Just very excited about this topic. It's very, very rise up with dragon, and it's very pertinent to me at this current juncture in my life.
Great morning, world! Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon!
Great afternoon, everyone. I usually start off by saying great morning. This is your friend, Dragon. But we are coming to you live today with our special guest, and that was something we were doing as a favor to her because she lives in the West Coast, and doing it early in the morning is a bit early for someone on the West Coast. So great morning, great afternoon, everyone. Just very excited about this topic. It's very, very rise up with dragon, and it's very pertinent to me at this current juncture in my life. So before I introduce this guest, and this is a treat, this is a real treat for you. I look back at a lot of the work that I had to do, and a lot of it, and you hear me talk a lot about cutting ties and things like that, you know, letting go of your past, which is very debatable, by the way. It's a very controversial topic. Should we let go of our past? Should we cut ties, or are they useful? But I speak a lot about that, and a lot of it, and you'll see this come out in my book, has to do with family. In fact, there's a whole chapter dedicated to family in my book, just the highs and the lows and the ebbs and flows. And what's really interesting is time placement. Right now, we are September 10th, 2021, and it's perfect timing for this guest because I'm going through another phase of that stuff right now. However, now I'm a little bit better equipped for it, which is really interesting. You know, so there was a time in my life where it was very difficult to even acknowledge and recognize some of the things that go on from our, as I say, our programmers, our mother, father, teacher, preacher, and now society and the highlight reel. Whatever we're consuming on a regular basis, and as you're growing up as a child, you're consuming whatever your programmers are telling you. That has a lot to do with how we perceive the world and call shots in the world. So this is really, really fun. So I want to introduce you, and I'll bring her out here in a second. Her name is Dr. Sherrie Campbell. And I just want to read a little bit of what I've learned about her, because she is credentialed up the wazoo, but she's also like super, super cool and laid back. Very rare that we meet people that have her credentials and her personality. So she's a licensed psychologist with over 2 decades. Actually, it's probably more than 2 decades because this was probably written five or 6 years ago, of clinical training and expertise. As you guys know, Chicken is very, very much involved in getting her degree in mental health, and she's going to be a psychologist as well. So she's going to be super psyched to find out about Dr. Sherrie. So she also shares her expertise about loving yourself with people throughout the United States and all over the world. So her reach is far, far, far beyond the Rise Up with Dragon podcast, let's just say. So she specializes in psychotherapy with adults and teenagers, including marriage and family therapy, grief counseling. And if you read her about section on her website, you'll see she pretty much works with everybody. But specifically, what I took interest in, and you'll find out about her latest book, But It's My Family. She specializes in helping people cut ties from toxic relationships and family. This is a fascinating topic for me, and I am super excited to welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast, Dr. Sherrie Campbell. Hey, Sherrie, how are you?
Hi, I have to know who Chicken is. I've got a chicken and a dragon, so I need you to help me here.
So you know who Dragon is because that's me. And
Yes.
The reason why I'm known as Dragon is because I am living in a mythical reality compared to what I used to be. Dragon.
I love it.
A very, very toxic, unconventionally dysfunctional life. So the fact that I am living the life that I am now, I used to look at as mythical. Now, part of my evolution, which had a lot to do with cutting ties from toxicity, was I created space because I was divorced. I had a previous marriage and a divorce. I created space to find the perfect counterpart for myself. So naturally, her real name is Mika, but everybody calls her Chicken.
I love that. I get a butterfly tattoo every time I go through a major life transition. So the butterfly's kind of been my totem animal, that I've adopted, and the phoenix. So,
well, with your permission, I will from this day forth call you Butterfly.
Love it. You've got it.
Chicken, dragon, and butterfly. So, Sherrie, thank you so much we've been trying to get this one together for a while. Sherrie's a very, very busy person, helping a lot of people as part of being a servant. So I'm excited to dive into this, and I want to kind of focus a little bit on your book, But It's My Family. But just so you know, she's written many other books, and she's got a new one coming out as well. We'll talk about that. But she wrote another book called Loving Yourself, The Mastery of Being Your Own Person. And then more recent than that one, she wrote a book called Success Equations. And I love the subtitle of this, The Path to Living an Emotionally Wealthy Life, which is probably what we're going to get into. So Sherrie, tell us a little bit about like how you became you, because obviously you've experienced some sort of dark, you're in the light. And whenever I see somebody out there dedicating their life to helping other people rise up from tragedy, there's a story behind it.
Well, I grew up in an incredibly beyond toxic family. I think toxic is as being light, just very cruel, manipulative, selfish, immature, really very evil parents. And it defined me from a very young age that I was in the way, that I wasn't loved, that I was a burden. I wasn't likable. I wasn't lovable. I hardly made it through several grades. That I have a PhD is somewhat of a miracle. I think many people who probably found out were like, what, her? But I had to find a way to turn my predators into a purpose, and not let myself sit and stay stuck in my pain. But I couldn't get away from my pain until I cut ties with both parents and my sibling. And it's been a journey of being alone and a journey of nobody out there really writing about my experience. But I started writing in journals when I was really young, and I needed someone to talk to, and I wrote myself into existence. I didn't exist in my family in any ways other than an intruder and the kid who wasn't wanted. And my journal became my best friend, my confidant, and I wrote myself into existence. And now I'm writing books, and I'm creating a path for other people. And I have found that there are incredible experts out there that write on this topic, but I can tell that many of them haven't lived it. And I think in this sort of dynamic, it's not your credentials that make you great. It's that I'm a survivor. I think survivors sometimes need other survivors. And that's kind of how it all started for me.
Yeah. And I love, there's a very big difference between, I love that you hit on that, the idea of being an expert teaching people, but yet having no real life experience. When you go through something, and there's potential danger in that, because you could have taken a different path and you could have just kind of pulled everybody below the line as a victim. But something in maybe your journaling and bringing yourself into existence, a little bit of self-therapy, I would assume you discovered an equation that you wanted to pay forward to other people. So what is it that you figured out? Like, what's that special secret sauce and that you figured out? I'd love to know how you figured it out and how you're kind of helping other people.
I think I figured it out just over time and starting to learn. I had to get distance first away from the family to find myself, to find my truth, because my truth was gaslighted, and I was punished for it, told I was crazy. So for a long time, I thought I was crazy. The first thing that toxic parents do when there's something going on or you're externalizing your pain is they tell you that you're mentally ill. There's some kind of neurological hang up you have. And then they go down to, must be your influences, your peers, the movies, the politics, your nutrition. But the last thing on the list that they look for is that maybe it's them and how they raised you. And I think getting into the field of psychology was incredible in terms of helping me to kind of unpack my development, my psychosocial development, and what that meant and where all the stages were that I didn't get needs met from my parents. And then when I had my own daughter, that's when it really hit me really hard that, there's something really, really wrong about my family. And I didn't cut ties until I was 45. I'm 50. So it's been 5 years, and it's been one heck of a 5 years. But it's a journey. It's not an event, Dragon, as much as it's like a process. I don't know that the magical sauce is one thing other than just an accumulation of experiences that proved my truth over time is what really helped. But me writing in that journal and having someone to talk to, something to talk to, writing with your hand connects your right and left brains. And I think it connected me to a higher part of myself. And that higher part of myself is my connection to self-love at that point. And it helped me to find my truth and then to speak it.
Funny, we have a lot in common, you and I, other than the fact that we're the same age. And I think we look pretty good, by the way.
I think we're looking pretty good too.
The whole concept of the Rise Up with Dragon podcast, it started with me just on my own, finding my way to journaling. And I would assume that I kind of wrote Dragon into existence as well. Here's an interesting thought. This as I hear you speak, and also what I'm hearing is that you might be ahead of other people because you've put a lot of the work in, but you're kind of walking alongside people, because I would assume that all of this work you're doing with other people is part of your healing process as well. Am I right in saying that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
We journey together. We're a tribe. And, for example, I recently found out through Google that my father had died. And the level of calculated cruelty to make sure I wasn't told by my family, as that also came out in the workings of things, because the truth will always come out. And knowing that also is very settling to my spirit. But I had shared my experience on my Facebook page, on a page that I really don't ever really talk about myself ever, because it's not about me, it's for them. I write my story in my books and they can have that there, but I really do my page for them. But I had let them know that I had found out this way, and I had never anticipated finding out on Google 2 weeks after he had passed and 2 days before his, service. Not that I would have gone, but he's still my dad. And he's the only dad that I'll ever have. And I should have been told. They should have had enough heart somewhere in them, but they're not. They're heartless. They see that it is as justified. And so when I put that on my page, it was amazing to me. It got well over 2,000 likes, and I can't even remember how many comments. And other people going, oh my God, I found out on Facebook. Or, oh my God, I didn't know other people would find out like this. And so some of it's so shaming that what happens to you, you can't explain it to other people and have other people know what to do with it. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I do heal alongside them, and they appreciate when I have those brief moments of sharing my personal story, not in my books, because I'm committed to them. So I want it to be for them, but they got a lot out of it, and they have no idea that they carried me through because at that moment I didn't feel alone. I thought I would research it on Google, but I didn't think I'd find out on Google. I'm from a small town. There's too many people that they could have had told me. And one person was threatened, actually instructed not to tell me.
Isn't that amazing? What I'm realizing, because I can look at some of the toxic relationships that I've cut out of my life. It's funny. I was listening to somebody the other day, and they were complaining that their numbers in their business went down in the last month. And they were asking in this forum, this mastermind, how did everybody else do? And I said, well, I cut 2 toxic relationships out of my life, so I'm winning, So it got a little chuckle. But here's what's interesting. I was thinking about this story about you finding out about your dad. So is he somebody that you had cut ties from?
Yes, I cut ties from him when I was 42 because of a violent threat to put me in a hospital.
So here's my question. What does it actually mean to cut ties? Because even though ties were cut,
Mhm.
it seems like there's still some power involved in like, hey, how come nobody told me about this? Like even you said, it's not that I would have gone, but he's my dad. So what does it mean? Like, how do we actually, what's the metric that just lets us know that we've successfully cut ties? Because I still love some of these people. I still have feelings for some of them. So just go into that a little bit. What does it mean to
Yeah,
cut
so cutting ties isn't about the other person or their toxicity or their role in your life. It has nothing to do with that. Cutting ties is only done so you can protect your space, protect your heart from abuse. It's not about not loving those people. It's not about wishing they were different. I can't make my dad not my dad. I will always grieve the dad that I never had and the dad that he should have been and the dad that I craved and missed and cried for my whole life. And he didn't say goodbye. So no matter how evil someone is, if they're going to die and I'm his only daughter, he's always going to be my dad spiritually, genetically. We are drawn to those people. So when I cut ties with people, it's not an assault on them. It's not even about them. It's about me setting up boundaries to protect my life and my heart and myself, my self-worth, my mental health, my well-being. It has nothing to do with not loving them. I love my dad. I loved my dad always. I will always love my dad. He didn't love me, but he was my dad. And children all want to be good. We want parents. We need parents. And so you can't divorce yourself genetically or spiritually from those who raise you in the same way that you can cut off a friend, cut off a boss, or cut off an ex-lover. I've cut ties with many ex-lovers and friends, and I don't think about them ever during a day. It's the best decision I ever made, but I am not spiritually, existentially related to them. They were not supposed to come included in my life package to help me become an amazing human being. They were supposed to be there. And that is a tie that you can't divorce. It is a tie that you cannot fully cut. And this is why I write on this topic, because cutting ties isn't cancel culture. I cannot cancel my father, my mother, my sibling. I will grieve them every single day for the rest of my life for not being able to show up in a way that they can support my mental health and well-being. It's not about being spoiled or entitled or any of those things. It's about that I'm abused emotionally. They abuse me. And there's a difference. I wish they didn't abuse me, but they do. So cutting ties is for me. It has nothing to do with them or my relationship with them. All I do is let that relationship either be emotionally violent or I put it into a state of silence. So it's the only thing that changes. The relationship is still there. It's the one relationship you can't not need for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's so, and hence the book, But It's My Family. It's so fascinating. So there's so many different ways of looking at this. And I'll give you an example for me. I spent the majority of my life sucking my thumb as a victim about some things that happened to me. I needed to cut ties from that to free myself from it, as you're saying. However, because it was family, it's still there. It's still there. I've just gotten effective at how I respond to it when it pops up, and I've created boundaries and things like that. However, another side of it, and I'd love to hear your take on this, and maybe this is some of my bullshit therapy that I do in my head. I mean, my philosophy is that I wake up every day and I create the fantasy as it suits me best. But one of the things that I've managed to do is also see that because of something that wasn't done right for me, it gave me potentially the ability to do right in that sense for my kids. Do you believe in that?
Yeah, I look at it as a corrective experience. I think having such a self-involved, immature very mean mother, so deceitful, such a betraying person, really gave me the exact opposite direction that I wanted to take with my daughter. And my daughter's 17, and I couldn't be luckier. And some of it isn't even me or my parenting. I think she's just so good. She's just a little earth angel. And I just feel so lucky to have her. And I certainly love her in all the ways that I wasn't. And, in fact, when she was a little tiny baby and my mother was in my life, she had said that, made an offhanded comment like, what you have with London, I've never had with you. And she didn't, because she never established it. I can't establish that with my mother as an infant or a 7-year-old or, So I'm just so lucky. And I do feel it's a corrective experience that you mix love with discipline. And I don't look at parenting as she owes me anything. I was kind of given this idea that I brought you into this life, I can take you out. She's my gift, and I have to earn her love by showing her love. And I look at it as leadership. I love leadership. Success Equations is a leadership book. And the more I read on leadership, the more I felt like I'm not here to be her parent or her owner. She doesn't owe me anything. I'm here to lead her, guide her, give her space, be there when she fails, help pick her back up, and lead her in a new direction. I'm her leader, not her parent. And I wish that, I get asked to write a parenting book all the time, and maybe someday I will. Right now, I'm just following the process of where my journey's taking me. And the next book is solely on toxic parenting instead of the toxic family. It's on toxic parenting and scapegoating. And I think it's leadership. And without coming from such terrible parents of my own, I don't know that I ever would have been able to become my own leader first, which I had to do because no one else was leading me, except therapists and other things that I was made to go to. And thank God that I was blessed with good ones and put with good ones, to the very demise now of my parents, probably the worst decision they think they made. But leadership is everything. And I'm my daughter's leader. She's my gift, and I'm just here to lead her and let her fly. Not here to own her and run a dictatorship. I'm not here to do that to her, or let alone neglect her. So yeah, I learned a lot from what I didn't get.
I love the concept of looking at our role as parents, as leaders. What I think truly defines a leader is somebody that doesn't create a situation for following. Like, I don't want my kids to follow me because I've fucked up a lot too. So I think that my role as a leader, as a parent, is to guide them to learn what I've done right, but then set them up to go further than I went.
Oh, I want my daughter to out-succeed me on every level. Whereas the more successful I got, the more rejected I was. I don't think they wanted the loser kid to go out and be successful. So that would take me too far out of my role as the scapegoat if I did that. And it did. I left the family. So I look at my daughter. She's very different than me. I was a very elite athlete as a little girl. My daughter could care less. She's a little artist, and she's so cute, and she's so different. And I feel so blessed that she's so different. I'm not here to determine who she is. I'm just here to give her the space and the prayers and the hugs to help her figure it out. That's all I'm here to do, is to provide her the space to be her, to love her in the right ways across all the developmental stages, to constantly be reading books on teenage girls so that I kind of have an idea of where she's at. I make life super fun and funny. We're super tight. And of course, my existence embarrasses her because she's a teenager, which I absolutely love, because I'm that mom hanging out the car like, bye, and she's like, Mom, oh my God, but like, I just didn't get anyone who cared if I was going or coming. And so I just love her so much. And yeah, I love being her leader. And she's so different than me that she's got to forge her own path in a lot of ways. I've never told her to be in sports. I never told her. I'm like, well, who are you? Like, what do you want to do? Let me help you get there.
Yeah. And I like to say to my kids, like, how can I show up to be your biggest fan? Like, where are we going? I love the way you use the word tight, by the way. So I want to talk a little bit about "But It's My Family," because just the title of that book alone, makes me say everybody needs to get this without even knowing what it's about. Here's my question, because when I hear "But It's My Family," my curiosity is this: like, where did this whole idea? I would assume you've done a little bit of the background work in this. Where did this whole idea of feeling guilty and feeling an obligation to forgive and forget all because it's family? Because what I see, I coach a lot of people, and I'm experiencing this to my own degree. We live in this world where parents can like totally fuck things up for a kid, but then at the end of the road, when they need something, somehow the kid, when they grow up, feel like, hey, but it's my family. I'm going to destroy my life and take care of this person. And the idea of telling, society, hey, I don't care about that stuff. These people, I can't help these people. They never helped me. That's like totally shunned. So where does that come from?
Well, there's a cultural and a religious kickback on this one. Okay. So honor thy mother and thy father is probably the most misused atrocity ever written. If you're not honored by your parents and you're abused, then you're treated like a piece of property. And then they can get away with it because it's your family. And anytime you come out and you say, wow, my mom is really abusive, people go, oh, no, but it's your mom. She loves you. She probably didn't mean it that way. So the erroneous belief is that all parents are good or all parents love their children. And that's just fundamentally not true. We need to be brave enough to call bad parenting for what it is, bad parenting. Not all people should be parents. And when you have parents that are not capable of love, they're not love-able, how can you feel lovable? So then you grow up knowing that the only role you can take to maintain any attachment to your parents is that of the bad kid, because you cannot out your parents' parenting and maintain an attachment to them. So you have to assume the role is the bad one for them to get out of being seen as a bad parent. And that's a sneak peek from the book that I'm writing today. Okay, that one will drop probably 2023. So I think that we're just so afraid to go back. I either get real mixed reviews on this book of mine. I can always tell who a toxic rejected parent is in my reviews as compared to the people who survived it. There's not an ounce of bitterness written into my book, and I'll have a rejected parent say, I wear my bitterness as a badge. And I'm like, there's not an ounce of bitterness. I don't feel bitter. I don't feel bitter or hateful toward my parents at all. Now, I think that how they've treated me is unforgivable. And so I don't sit in a space of of bitterness because I don't forgive, which is a big myth. I did something deeper than forgiveness. Okay. I had to accept them for exactly who they were and not need them to be different, even though I desperately wanted for it to be different. And there are still days I want my mom, or I wish I had my dad, or, my daughter got this horrible allergy once to this drink, and I just wish I had a mom to call. Like, what do I do? I was so scared for my kid. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so it's just me, so I accept them. And that was deeper. Every time I forgave, my family has set me up for more abuse and put me into an extremely codependent relationship. So I view forgiveness as an act of mercy that I give as a gift to another person who shows true remorse and changed behavior. My parents aren't sorry. As you can see, that my dad left this earth with thinking he left me with, this pain, but he died with it. He didn't leave me with anything because my boundaries are up. I protected myself from his inability to protect himself from himself to be a good dad to me. So he didn't leave me with anything. He died with it. He died with the ego of not being able to say 2 words to his only daughter, which are, hey, I'm really sorry. Right? He died with that. He didn't leave me with it. So if someone's not sorry, then forgiveness isn't an option. Some people hear my version of acceptance and they say, oh, well, that's how I interpret forgiveness. Totally fine. It's semantics. I don't really care what word you use. But for me, as a human being, in my own experience, me forgiving these people set me up to be further and further abused every single time. So I personally have not a great experience with that word. So to heal, I found a new word. And that word is acceptance and surrender. I surrendered to my reality. I stopped banging up against it, trying to change it, wishing it to be different, trying to think it into being different, praying for it into being different. It just was what it was, Dragon. And I had to say, oh, I have to let it go. And from that lesson, I've learned that it actually takes a far greater power to let go and risk that void than it does to clutch and hang on to something that will never change. So if other people in the audience feel like my version of acceptance is their definition of forgiveness, awesome. But because forgiveness caused me so much pain and heartache and further abuse, it's just not the right word for me. But I have come to the same place as anybody else. You know, in fact, I had a woman who really got involved in my mother's smear campaign. After I'd cut ties, she went around telling people I was mentally ill. I was a bipolar monster. You know, she didn't know what got into me. I needed help, you know, all these things. And she contributed quite deeply to my pain and the betrayal that I was feeling. And several years later, she called me and she apologized. And I sat without apology for a minute, looked at the damage done to my life, and that I knew I'd never be able to reconcile with this person. I wouldn't ever want her in my life again. So here's what I said to her. I said, you know what? I really appreciate that you called for you and your own growth. And I hope that your apology does something for you. I hope it sets you on a path to having more self-awareness, to being more empathetic, to maybe, you know, looking at both sides of a story before you jump in and go and like a cancer get inside my life and eat me from the inside out. So I would like to end this phone call at this point with you knowing that I really hope that this apology has done something for you and your growth, because it does not fix or solve my pain. And I do accept you for exactly who you are. And I wish you nothing but your highest good. And I really hope that you get something from this.
That's so powerful. I love the word surrender. And you know what's funny? Humans are so funny,
aren't they?
And it's not our fault, you know,
No.
in many ways, because this is just, you know, our programmers are teaching us what their programmers taught them. But like we're taught these words like forgiveness, and we'll spend our whole freaking life trying to define it and then redefine it and say things. Cause I mean, like I've done podcast episodes on forgiveness and I'm like, well, my version of it, which is very similar to yours, but it's like, just use a different word. Right?
I know. And people get so hung up on what the word is. And then if it's the right word or the wrong word, and it's like, are we really going to go there? Because does it matter? Don't sweat the small stuff. You know, it's like, why are you sweating that? Your truth is a unique experience for you. I have to find my way to healing my way. And if the word forgiveness doesn't work for me because it's associated with pain and triggers, then I need to find a new fucking word. I just need to find a new word. Who cares what word I use? You know, what you should care about is what I've done with it. What you should care about is that it set me free For me, accepting was so much harder than forgiving. Sometimes we forgive people because we don't want to look unforgiving, because there's so much judgment around this word. And the more judgment there is around a word, what I find is the more I move away from that word and try to find a new one, because I spent my whole life being criticized and judged in my family. And honestly, writing this book does not serve me. It brings me quite a bit of abuse from these very black and white minded people that don't want to believe that parents can be really bad. Right. So I've got to be some spoiled, entitled, you don't know me. So I make my own way in this life gratefully, happily. So I had to find a new freaking word, and that word really worked for me. And I think it works for a lot of people who have been abused, molested, raped. I mean, it's like, you don't forgive those people. You don't have to, but you can accept what happened to you. See, I don't want to sit at the door of no contact and not live the life that's on the other side of the door. For my first few years, I stayed stuck to the door with my ear up to it, like, because that's the only life I knew. And then I'm like, oh God, I'm just sitting here at the door. And there's like this whole life that I shut the door for. But I'm so afraid to not have my parents, or I'm so afraid of what are they going to do to try to destroy my life, which in the last 5 years, it's unbelievable what they've tried to do to destroy my life. And so cutting ties did not end my abuse. But what it did do is it's given me longer periods between the abuse, and it has also given me just such an amazing amount of space that what they throw into my life, I can actually think about it rationally now. See, when you're raised by abusers, you're divorced from rational thought. You're living in fight or flight. Now there's really nothing they can throw my way that I can't have the space to digest it and respond rather than react, because reactive abuse, where you're getting baited and then you react and now you're the abuser, was my life. And so I've also accepted that they think I'm an abuser. That's their story about me. It's me. It's not them. So, okay. If that makes you happy and that's what you want to think, if it makes you go away from me and give me space, think it. Like, I don't care. It's not my truth, so I don't really matter. Their lie about me doesn't really matter anymore. That used to matter. It used to scare me that all these people believed this horrible untruth about me. And then I got to this place, and I write about this in Success Equations, is that, you know what? I'm just going to heal in private. I'm going to live in private, and my success will speak for itself. And it absolutely has. And I haven't had to go say a word to stop the smear campaign like I used to try. Like, no, that's not how I am. That's not what happened. I'm crying and so upset and powerless. And so I don't sit at that door anymore either. Now, when I find out on Google my dad died, I go sit by the door for a little bit. But if you look at my room that I'm in, I found this artist that painted my life. And this is my beanbag, like a womb. So my pain is behind me. And then on this wall, that same artist painted some stuff about healing and walking through a fire and empathy. And then in front of me is this amazing woman with wild red hair holding the earth above her hand. So there's the Sherrie behind me always. I need her. Then I have who I am today. And I'm in love with the woman in front of me that I'm becoming. And so I've set this room up in a way where I'm always looking forward to the woman I'm becoming, knowing that it's this girl behind me that is going to be responsible for this amazing woman up here. As long as I honor her, I don't criticize her, I listen to her, and I mother her and father her the way she needs. And so I create this room of healing, and this is where I write, and I do all my work and my podcasts and all that stuff, because I need the visuals and I need all the things to remind me that I've got this and that I'm okay. And I'll always be okay. And that truth is what gets me through, is I'm not divorced from my truth or my experience anymore by these family members that needed me to not speak the truth of the family secrets.
I love it. It's all, the word that keeps resonating in my head is responsibility. It's a lack of, responsibility. As a matter of fact, if I'm going to be transparent, I have done others wrong in my life.
We all have.
And what's interesting is the moment that you realize you've done something wrong, you hope that they will forgive you, rather than just saying, hey, I fucked up, that's on me. So what I've done is with my kids, because, I mean, when you've gone through some stuff, you just dread the most out of anything in the world doing it to your kids.
100.
So when I catch myself letting my door in my kid's life, I love that concept. What I'll do is I will take radical responsibility for it with my kids, and I won't ask them to forgive me. I'll just say, I want you to know that I just did that. I don't know, I didn't mean it, but and I'm not asking you for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I did it, and I'm going to work on that.
It's so brilliant, because there's in the book that I'm writing today, I talk about maladaptive guilt and adaptive guilt. And not all guilts are created equal. When you grow up under toxicity, you're made to feel guilty for things you didn't do wrong. And that's really confusing. But our kids and us need a certain amount of optimal guilt to develop a conscience. We need optimal levels of frustration, optimal levels of guilt, so that we know right from wrong. And I think it's a pressure if you say, do you forgive me? I don't even think that should ever be asked. I think it's like, just own your shit. Listen, I freaked out, had a really bad mom moment. Dear Lord, so sorry. I did not function better in that moment. I'm a complete asshole. Yeah, you're right. So I own it. I'll even say to my daughter, like, okay, what's my consequence? Like, just to be playful with her. And I think you should always just own your shit. Like, my daughter's at that time in her life where, she's an alien. She's 17. Her ears work only in the moment that you ask for something, but then, it's gone 5 seconds later. She lives in her room. There's magical things going down in there. And she moves. How's your day, baby? Meh. And then every now and again, she's all over me. And I'm like, oh, get back in my belly, sort of thing. But I'm wanting her to learn to kind of just take her stuff into the kitchen, So I'll do stuff like this. I'm like, London, I got to introduce you to somebody. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, her name's Dishy, dishwasher. I can't believe y'all haven't met. I'm like, the sink loves you. Best friends, you fill her up, she digs her, she's doing her job. But Dishy's like so left out. Like, she wants to do the work, and she's like, Mom, but she's laughing. And my kid now gets her stuff to the dishwasher, so, or she'll say, you're not perfect. And I'm like, well, God knows I'm not perfect. And I'm like, if you think I need to work on some, girlfriend, you just go ahead and tell me. I don't make it like I'm up here and you're down here. It's the two of us only. So we're a team. And if there's things, and so she'll be funny, like, well, you should stop falling down the stairs and breaking your hand, or you should not knock yourself out in the gym. And I'm like, I know, I'm so clumsy. I know. Okay, I'm going to work on it. She's like, okay. So she doesn't ever feel like she's bad, but I'm giving her those optimal levels of frustration with a lot of humor, but a lot of humility. I think to be a good leader of your children, you have to be humble. Why are you better than because you're older? Like, where does this get in someone's head? I'm older, therefore I'm better. Huh? What does that have anything to do with being better? You're just older. You could be dumber. Because it's about your EQ, your emotional quotient, not what you know. It's how you are. If you're an abuser, you're not better than your innocent, sweet child who's nicer to you than you are to them. So yes, own your shit. That's the most pinnacle thing you can do as an adult. It defines adulthood is responsibility. Go find an irresponsible, mentally healthy adult. I dare you. Go find one. You won't.
Well, I would just look in the mirror.
Exactly. No.
But I wouldn't tell anybody. It would just be me and that person.
Okay, I got that, right? Because irresponsibility, you cannot be mentally well and be irresponsible as an adult. It just doesn't work that way. That's mental illness. It's not mental health.
You know, what's interesting, and I don't want to get into, this. I want to move into what it would be for someone to get started with this process. But what's fascinating to me, and Dragon's not giving his opinion because I get a lot of interesting responses when I talk about religion, but I was aware from a very young age that we're forgiven for our sins. And another thing that's interesting is in that I learned what sins were. And some of them weren't so bad. You know what I mean? So of course we struggle with all this stuff. So part of me, I just find joy and comfort in looking at crazy people, including my family, and just saying, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You know what I mean? Because I like to think in my fantasy that nobody means anybody harm. And when they do harm others, it's unconsciously to elevate and make themselves feel validated or significant, which is still fucked up. But I've learned, and this has been part of my healing, to let go of the idea that it was about me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's that book, The Four Agreements, take nothing personal. Religion is such a sticky thing, and I was not raised in religion, and I have no judgment. I treat many people that are. However, I think there needs to be updated. Instead of the commandments, I think it should be the commitments. That simple change in word makes a huge difference. It shouldn't be the 4 agreements. It should be the 4 commitments. We need to commit. We're in a process here. Life is not an event. It's a process. When we make things black and white, we start creating division, we start creating failure, and we start creating that we're never good enough. You can be spiritually abused. I have treated many what they call themselves as recovering Catholics, or to me, there's just, the truth is inside you. If you want to find it, you're not going to find it in a building or a book, including my own. You can find pieces of your truth, but your truth will still be unique as the fingerprint of your own. We're here living in this body, separate from everybody else's body, so that we will have boundaries, so that we can live. God gets an individual experience through each of us living in this life, right? I do believe that people consciously hurt other people. And I do believe there are truly evil people. And I believe that they know it. So I differ from you there. However, when I look at it, my way of healing was it's like a school. So my mom is like in pre-K and I'm in graduate school as a soul. And she's going to have to learn to do all these evil things and be a mean girl and betray and lie and collude with certain family members and lie for them and just do these wild things that you can't imagine a mother would do at all ever. But if she's in pre-K and she's got to figure this out, then she's got a long time to be coming back here on this planet. And that's her path and her karma. My favorite saying that I say to myself is, allow each soul the total freedom to walk their path. The greatest gift I gave my parents was no contact, because I needed and wanted them to be different. And then therefore I am not in their highest good allowing them to walk their path. The most loving thing I did was do that. Now, that's also a consequence, and there's laws of cause and effect written throughout every religious text known to man. So if you deeply, truly love somebody, as I do my parents, you give them the natural consequences that their behavior merits. You at least gift them the opportunity to change. I cannot control if they take the opportunity or not. And they haven't. So my job is to allow them the total freedom to walk their path. I do not have to walk that path with them just because I'm their child. The greatest gift I give in the highest form of love, as I understand love, is freedom.
I love that.
So they have their freedom from me. I will never, ever tug or pull on them to be different, to be what I needed.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's loving.
And it's such a great gift because you're not asking for anything in return. Love. It's just so much wonderful. I have to admit, when I first met you, I mean, I liked you. I knew we'd be friends. But when I heard some of the verbiage before I really got to speak to you today, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to be on the other side of a couple of things. But then I caught myself like, what does that even mean? So yeah, I love it. I get, let's put it this way. I get you now.
Yeah.
What I give all, and I'll send you a pair of these. I give everybody a pair of my Make Sense glasses.
I love it.
Because when I take these glasses off, everything's a fucking mess. But when I put them on, everything.
Me too. I can't see anything, Dragon. I'll take them off and I'm like, oh yeah, I can't see me.
So here's what I want to know. Like, I guess we can call it the deep breath before the plunge. So somebody's listening to this. Somebody comes across Sherrie Campbell, and I want everybody to know how to get in touch with you. Her website is Dr. Sherrie Campbell, and that's 2 R's. So it's DrSherriecamp, as in Paul, Bell. I'll put that in the show notes. Okay. And she's got a spectacular Facebook page, which is like a little overwhelming for her because it's so big. But for that person out there that wants to start their new life, but they're still at the door, what's the first step for them, whether it's to engage with you, or what's the first step to do this difficult task that took you 45 years?
It took me 45 years and still every day it's taking me every day. Right. I would just say that I started believing myself, and then I started researching. I researched and researched and researched. I guess that what was really missing for me in the research was an expert that wrote about it from their own experience. And so I never intended to write a book in my life. So that ended up being something I did, and writing in a journal. I know a lot of people don't write, and it can be an impossible habit for somebody if it's just not their thing. But my boyfriend asked me the other day, like, how do you already have another book? It's been 4 months. I mean, how do you even, and I don't even know. I just told him I need someone to talk to. And I talked to my computer, and I talked to my truth. And then I have someone to talk to, and it's still me, but something higher than me that I think I contact, maybe like a musician when they sing. There's something about me when I write that I contact something a lot higher than myself, something more rational. So I can respond.
And now you got to write the 4 commitments.
I know. See, gosh. So I would start researching. I think before you head into therapy, you really need to know what your issues are to some level. There are so many therapists out there that believe that being a good therapist means keeping you in ties with your family, because they face their own moral conflict. And bless their hearts, they mean well. But if they haven't ever had a toxic family member, or perhaps they're afraid that they would lose their own children someday, this like an existential dread. You have to find the right therapist. So keywords to search for would be toxic family, things like that. When you go onto a site like Psychology Today, let's say, and you're looking for treatment. My Facebook page is absolutely incredible. I think I have like 132,000 followers. The engagement is so high, and I do my best to keep up with it. But I give 3 blogs a week, a video every week, and then memes on the other days. And it's free. It's free therapy. It's little bites of information. When you're in a toxic tie, we all know how headspun we are. We are so divorced from rational thought. So little bites of information are really healthy. And that's why I wrote Your Pocket Therapist, which is my most current book, because it's a daily devotional. And it just kind of gives you a bite for the day. And you don't have to chew on a whole chapter where you want to underline everything. I mean, people send me pictures of my book and they've basically colored it. And so Your Pocket Therapist is just a quick dose. It's like your little coffee in the morning and your little mantra for the day. And I have keep this in your pockets, so a little thing. But I would just research, start with you and then work outward, make sure you find the right therapist. So I'm hoping that's helpful, because I do think that's the place to start. We think we want to start on the outside and we want to try to work our way in, or that someone else can get us in. But I tell my patients, you know you way better than I do. So you are going to take me on this raft and you're going to guide me through your river. And as an objective, I'm going to tell you what I see or how I see it. But this is not my journey. It's yours. So I'm here. I'm with you. I see you. I love you. Let's head down the path. So that's how I would start.
What's the name of the Facebook group? And are people welcome to check it out?
It's just Sherrie Campbell, PhD. You just
Sherrie
look
Campbell,
up.
PhD. Look up the Facebook page.
Yeah.
DrSherrieCampbell.com. Go get the book, But It's My Family. And what I would say to everybody listening is whatever you're thinking right now is okay, because it's where you're at right now. Where things get sticky is where what you're thinking is the thing that's holding you back from you having what you want, whether that's happiness, health, wealth, whatever it is. So, I'm a big advocate of people starting from where they're at. And I think a great place to start would be to learn and to read and to write and to check out her Facebook page. But Sherrie, what a fun conversation with you. I love the idea of, butterfly and dragon.
I do too. I love it. I want to say something. You had said it, you just said something about being okay. And one of my favorite sayings that I say to myself, because when you grow up under parents who expect near perfection, or they expect you to just self-sufficiently raise yourself without bothering them, is I've learned that it's okay not to be okay. You need those minutes if you'd never let yourself not be okay, you're never going to reach okay. You don't want to sit in the victim state, but
isn't that another form of being okay? To be okay with not being
okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's okay. Like literally it's all okay. It's okay. And it's also temporary. My concept of let each soul walk its path, I apply that to my emotions as well. Let each emotion have its space to come and to go. You don't want to clutch onto an emotion too long either. Let it come, let it teach you, then let it go. Because it will pass. Everything passes.
This too shall pass. I love
yes.
it. Thank you so much for being with us. And
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
To building a friendship. Go check out her books. Go check out her website. It'll all be in the show notes of the podcast. Wonderful, wonderful episode. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram at Rise Up with Dragon, iTunes, all that stuff. Is that a little dog in the background?
Yeah, it's my little doggie. She threw up this morning all over. Poor honey.
Thanks so much, Sherrie. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks, Dragon.